I don't believe that public schooling is good for any child. School choice, having the money following the child, like, do I think that that is the best way? No, I don't. I think it should be I think homeschool is the best way. I think that's the only way you can pretty much guarantee your child's mind is safe, from these abusers. Um, but I'll take school choice now, because I don't think that 50 million people families are going to be like, yes, let's all pull our kids out of school, so I don't know.
Question for you, Keisha. Do you believe that schooling should be privatized? So you just want to get rid of public education altogether? I mean, you say that you believe homeschooling is the best option. Fair enough. But, there are going to be some parents who won't homeschool their children. They just they will make the choice for whatever reason. There are a multitude of reasons that we can think of who just won't do that. So yeah, I guess that's my question. I mean, school as an institution, where do you stand on that? Should it be completely privatized? Should we have no schools? Should we take it back to the Middle Ages where, only clergymen were literate? I mean, I'm being
Yeah.
extreme, but you get what I'm saying. Like, what's
Um,
your take on just school as an institution, I guess?
I think that the best system would be for parents to educate their children, and then they can go on to college and stuff like that, like if they decided to do that. I think it would be best taken back to a pre-compulsory um public schooling system.
For generations, most communities boasted but one room and a single teacher with which to educate their entire and assorted progeny.
I understand that that is such a massive restructure, just like how public schooling was a massive restructuring of society. To take it out would be a massive restructuring of society. And I know that people they're not there, So I'm like, okay, let's do the school choice, and and little by little. I mean, my goal would be to eventually just get rid of it, because I just don't think, looking at it, I mean, unless it was set up, I don't even. I'm going to stick with what I said in the beginning. I think we should go back to how we used to educate our children.
Johnny learned his multiplication tables as his father and grandfather had before him. By the same process, he learned the key dates of history and impossible to spell words.
Now, can we modernize that? Can we use, yes, we absolutely can. I would be cool with that. But I also know that 50 million families, or even close to that, are not ready to make such a shift that it would take. I mean, you're talking about mothers coming out of, coming in from the workplace. You're talking about a lot of changes that,
Right.
I don't think people are ready to make.
So I don't think that school itself is bad.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was in education for about 12 years. I don't think that school is bad. I think what makes school bad is agendas and ideologies and philosophies. And when that stuff goes into the classroom, your child going to school to learn the basics, I don't see anything wrong with that. Learning how to read and write is normal. It's the other stuff. It's the indoctrination that's the problem. So I think that public school itself can be saved if we get rid of all of the extra stuff. So you get rid of all of what they would call in college the electives. You don't need the social studies. You don't need the history. You need the basics. And I think if you got to master the basics, even if it came to like STEM, where it was like, the science, the tech, engineering, and all that, even if it was that. But I think the problem with public school is that public school is influenced by media, politics, socialism, all the bad stuff. So I don't know. I think it's a lot to ask for a lot of parents because most parents work in America.
Mm-hmm.
Most parents I just think that we can work. And to me, it's a benefit for a child to be able to go to a public school that we're actually paying into, your property tax is paying for it. So we're paying into it. And to me, at this point, most folks agree to do it. They're not picking and riding about paying these taxes for these schools. I just think that learning the basics in schools is fine. I think it's everything else that's the problem. I don't think I've been in education, and for most of those students that I work with, school is literally the most positive thing they have. Outside of the school, it's they're going back to the hood They're going to be indulging Black culture. They're going with their family. School is the only place where they can actually get some kind of
Structure.
structure, some kind of understanding about something. And so I'm not saying that parents can't do it, Keisha. I'm just saying that to me, it will be easier to just cut out stuff that's in public school and make it just for them to learn the basics. And maybe even go on, I don't know, you can go on field trips and stuff too, but go outside and play and all that stuff,
Yeah.
play sports. I just think it's
Mhm.
just the indoctrination pieces of it that's causing all the problems. If I go walk into a school and I see all the children on the board with the rainbow sign on there, it's just like, oh, that kind of crazy. That's what's messing the school up. Not the fact that the child is in the school.
But here's the
But
problem, though.
Well, can I just like really, really quick, Chad, before all these, public schooling started with an agenda. That's my problem. Like the whole concept of it started with an agenda.
Columbia University is responsible for the spread of today's revolutionary teaching ideas.
We are trying to help the child build ideas of how to live and work with others. In a word, we are equipping the child to face his future by learning to face his immediate present.
It was never meant to educate. So I don't think that you could, if you had, I feel like the moment you get the government into it, it creates a lot of problems where the political stuff comes in automatically. And then now you got the agendas, everybody wants a piece, and it creates a thing. And when within the first 10 years of public schooling beginning, education in America declined. So like there was never a point where public education was, we were, when it came into play, that it was on the rise and kids were doing good. It never did good. Its first 10 years of being implemented across the nation, it had already started to decline. So I'm just like, I don't.
why do you think that is? Or do you think that's just because the children couldn't read and write and do math? Or why do you think that was?
I think it was because the setting, the style, what it was created to do wasn't there to teach you how to learn. So because it was never created to actually educate you, you didn't get educated. You stopped getting educated. And so I just think that its entire inception was built on something that was never beneficial for human beings. So I don't think it would have to be another type of system. It couldn't mimic, sitting in this building, the one expert before you, everybody just be conformed. Everybody, there's no individuality, there's no uniqueness. That's not really how we're wired. So, everybody on the same grade in the same classes. Like, I think it was better when you kind of had the community together and you had a few teachers in a room and they were, okay, you can work with these students over here. And everybody wasn't all the 8-year-olds together, all the 10-year-olds together. Like, that is not how we function. And so I just think it would have to be a completely different system.
The problem with what you're saying, Blanche, because, from the surface level, what you're saying sounds ideal. It sounds good, but I think that we should consider historical context when we're talking about this kind of thing, because when it comes to any policy, especially a lot of welfare policies, how those policies kind of came into existence and in the way that they were advocated for in Congress, the whole concept was it would alleviate this, it will alleviate that, it will remove the burden in this respect and that respect. I forget the way that Walter E. Williams put it. You have to look at the result and not the
intent.
The intent. There you go. The reality of it is what we see with respect to public education is inevitable. And so, yes, we can pass laws just like DeSantis did there in Florida, the end woke legislation. We can pass these laws, but the reality of it is a lot of the issues that we see are inevitable because you are basically putting the charge of curriculum making into an administrative kind of body or entity who is going to allow for these philosophies and everything else to creep in eventually.
Today, an overwhelming majority of U.S. educators are convinced that these new teaching methods are best equipping today's youngster for today's world.
Now, hold on, Miss Fox. It's all very well to teach my boy to paint pretty pictures and build birdhouses, but he doesn't even know his multiplication table.
Whenever it came to the spread of public education in the beginning, you didn't have a lot of parents who believed that this will lead to my children being indoctrinated against our interests as a family, against the country, so on and so forth. You had these people who thought, okay, well, my kids will be educated and hopefully they will get enough education to make enough money to get our family out of poverty or whatever the case may be. Because that's exactly how it was sold to them there at the turn of the 20th century. And then, too, when you read John Dewey's Primary Education Fetish, which I think was published in 1898, a lot of the things is what he was advocating for.
The world is moving at a tremendous rate. No one knows where. We must prepare our children not for the world of the past, not for our world, but for their world, the world of the future.
He was talking about these kids need to break away from the past way of doing things and the way of looking at the world and the way of navigating the world. And they need to get a good, robust education that teaches them about the mechanics of how things work. They need to go on field trips. They need to learn the basics of reading, writing, and arithmetic. That was how it was established by John Dewey himself.
There are ways of making spelling and reading fun. Progressive education is in force. Learning by doing, learning about practical everyday problems, perhaps a traffic problem, and practical teaching. A child can dictate what he sees before he can read about it in a book.
I read The School of Darkness about a year ago. Bella Dodd, who was a communist agent and who was responsible for infiltrating the Catholic Church with communist agents who were able to eventually work their way up to the Vatican. She herself was an educator. She was born in Italy. She lived in Italy for the first 6 years of her life, and then she came to the United States. Now, even though she had some kind of soft exposure to the Catholic Church and the Catholic religion, she really didn't believe it deeply in those early years of her life. It was just more of like a tradition, in the same way that somebody who lives in the Middle East might be exposed to the Islamic faith. And so Bella Dodd didn't have any kind of deep connection with the Catholic faith that was predominant there in Italy when she was growing up for the first 6 years of her life. She gradually came to a place where she wanted so badly to be an American that she began to put off the old Italian way of living, including the Catholic faith that everybody subscribed to there in Italy. So she would go to school. She was very good at school. She began to look at the world through what was then considered a more scientific versus religious way of looking at the world. And then she would eventually become a communist and help to infiltrate the Catholic Church with communist agents. I think when you read her book and you read about how educators in the 1920s and 30s were basically pumping communism into the minds of their students, they were doing this not with some kind of like hidden agenda or anything like that. They were doing that because they themselves were exposed to communism in college, and they felt so excited about it that they wanted to teach the up and coming children this same kind of ideology. And so there doesn't necessarily have to be a hidden hand at play in order for these kind of philosophies and ideologies to creep into the schools. It just takes somebody themselves learning about it and then being all too excited to teach the up and coming generation about it. And so that is something that it's inevitable. It's unavoidable, because even though you can pass legislation in your state capital or in our nation's capital, you don't know what's going on in the classrooms, right? And so this thing is inevitable. And so to Keisha's point, you have these kind of dominoes that are set up, and they all one depend on the other. This is our infrastructure. All of our infrastructure here in 21st century United States is built around the fact that we do have this mass public school system. Our economy is set up to where both the mother and the father have to work, because if you don't, you won't have a means to pay bills, right? everything kind of depends on the other. And so while we can sit here and talk about family values, and I stand by those family values, like I intentionally set up my family to where my wife doesn't have to work, to where my kids are being homeschooled. Um, I did certain things and made certain sacrifices to make that happen. Um, the fact is, for the vast majority of us, we do depend on legislation in order to get us to the point where we can do that kind of thing. Or at least we think in our minds that we have to have certain laws change and in the Department of Education and do this and do that. But the reality of it is it's all about values, and you either have those values or you don't. But this notion that, and I'm ranting at this point, but this notion that that we need to just strip public education down to its bare bones, to me, that's not a solution, because that might be a temporary fix, but I think these philosophies will ultimately creep right back in, and then you're right back at square one. With all due respect, I'm not saying that to cause an argument or anything like that. It's just like you said what you said, and it made me think of what I'm saying now. So I do kind of wonder about, is that something that you see as well? Like this kind of ultimate like creeping back into the schools if we were to like pass legislation or something to get rid of these philosophies in the schools.
So the problem with education system is the people that are in it. And you mentioned people that have hidden agendas, but you also have people that don't even care. So for some folks, it's just a job. For some folks, it's to indoctrinate. For some folks, they actually care about it is all different intents on quote unquote why they're doing what they're doing in the school. I'm saying practically the majority of the country is going to reject an abandoning of public schools. They're just going to reject it. And so I'm saying that they're going to reject it and they're going to be like, no, even if it's on the state level, they're going to say no. So if people are going to reject it, then what is the other solution or alternative to the masses rejecting doing away with the public system, school system? I'm saying that it's not difficult for there to be a school of 2,000 children and you have all these teachers in the classroom and you have a principal, you got 3 vice principals, you have all these people in the school that are there to make sure you can't do this and you shouldn't be doing this. If you ever like worked in a school, you'll see there's so many things that they'll tell you that you can't. There's so many checks and balances. Those same checks and balances can be in place for Marxism, for communism, for LGBTQ. Like those things can be in place. There's many teachers that hate the principal because he's always in the classroom, sitting in, listening, see what's going on, talk like all this stuff. So again, I'm just looking from the standpoint of, and not in this perfect world, in a world where I know that most people don't value education, period. They just don't. So you're talking about the majority of the country that doesn't really value it. They're not ready for this drastic change to say, let's do this. I'm saying if your property tax dollars are going to this school and you don't like what they're doing, then guess what? The parents should go to the school and say no. Like I've seen parents got all the stroke. I've seen it. I've been there. The parents have all of the stroke in the school. So when they walk into the school, it could be one parent hollering and screaming about something. Guess what? They're going to change whatever needs to be changed for that one parent. So again, I just feel like the reason why this stuff is able to sneak back in and creep back in is because nobody's at the gate. Nobody's guarding the gate. Nobody's there because nobody really cares. People are getting a check. You're getting this money. Okay, the kids are behaving. That's good enough for me. I'm saying the same way you got to follow all these guidelines when it comes to a public school. All these checks, you got to make sure they're doing this, you got to teach it, all that. You can do the same thing with the other stuff. I'm not saying that a child should be locked in a room all day. I'm not saying when the bell rings, you got to file in a straight line and walk past. I'm not saying none of that stuff. I'm saying just for the basic education. Mm-hmm. That's all I'm talking about. Because most of these parents got to work. Most of these parents were educated in public schools. They don't have this other alternative way of even looking at this stuff. And so I'm for homeschool. I went to private schools. I'm saying the majority of people, the majority are going to reject. They're going to reject it. So if they're going to reject it, what is the most feasible thing to do? What is the most feasible thing would be to actually I guess, try to alter what the public school has been. Like you mentioned, Keisha, in the first 10 years, it had negative results.
Mhm.
But like Chad said, who was teaching the children though? Who are the type of people that even get into education? What type of person even wants to be a teacher? More than likely, they're probably going to be liberal. They're probably going to be, probably going to have some kind of influence of socialism. Like that too even goes into the field in the first place. So should we get John the mechanic to teach about cars? Should we get old Ray Ray from the hood to do? Like they don't have to be, in my opinion, quote unquote, educators. They can be normal people teaching these kids. You might have farmers in the community that do stuff, teaching these kids about stuff. I'm just saying that from a practical sense, we got millions upon millions upon millions upon millions of children in these public schools. Everybody's mind's already fixed on it.
Yeah.
So I just don't know how you change this around by saying, you know what, we finna get rid of it. Then these people gonna start you want to see a riot.
Oh yeah.
They're gonna tear the country apart. When COVID happened and them kids had to do this distant learning and had to be man, you saw what was going on. Them kids couldn't read in 2 days. Like, I'm like, it was horrible.
But I will.
So
I'm sorry.
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, when I was going down to the school board meetings, and not just me, parents all over the country was going down to these school board meetings because we were seeing what was going on in the classrooms. We did not feel like we had the power. So, because they were literally our school board. The governor had to sue the school board to follow the parents' wishes. So this power that we thought we had, like I honestly did not expect to get that much pushback from my school board. I was one of these people that did not. I thought like you. I thought, okay, we just got to go down there. Clearly, they just need to hear some parents. They're not going to really push back on this stuff. No, these people, that's why they are in a cult. They literally they saw the inappropriate materials. They voted on it to be in the schools. Parents just didn't know this. They saw the critical race theory in the schools and they said, yes, that's what we want. When parents didn't want it, they didn't care that we didn't want it, because these experts, they already come in with this idea that they know more than parents anyway. They are coming in with the idea that you are the one that needs to be re-educated. They don't believe, they think you're stupid. They think that parents are stupid because they don't have the degree, darling. They really do. I've seen it in my own school board. Like, they don't respect parents, Blanche. Just
But how did y'all go in the meeting though?
huh?
How did you go in the meeting? See what I'm trying to tell you is with the parents I saw, they didn't care about what all that let's adjourn the meeting, none of that.
You cannot tell a kid that they can't talk about a situation that they've been through. So yeah, I'm going 1,000 miles per hour to this school, because what the do you mean my child needs to stop talking about what the she done been through?
Them parents walk in the building. Where is the principal at? Bonnet, backing kids, loud. They don't care about none of that. What I'm saying is, y'all trying to go to the school board like Keisha King, Chad Jackson, Teach 'em Chuck, Blanchard. No, that's not how they came to the building. No. They came in there with the whole hood. Where are they at? We want it done now. So I'm saying they was acting ignorant, and whatever they wanted to get done, next day you got a meeting.
Elementary school principal Donna Trippi sent an email warning about a suspicious man that allegedly stared at and followed a parent and her child. The email described the man as African American. Parents can speak candidly on the matter, and tonight they held nothing back. The principal issued an apology.
So we got to act like BLM then. That's what you're saying.
Listen, and people used to say, why are we doing this for their parent? Like, people used to say it, why are we doing this for just such and such? Because they know when their parents say, I'm finna pull my child out to school, I'm finna get these, like when they start talking like that, because them kids are money. When they start talking about, I'm about to pull this and do this, I'm just saying, when I was in education, the reason I left was because the parents had, in my opinion, too much power. They don't know nothing. They get something 1 minute, they get up out of bed, they come up there looking crazy, and they want something done. No, they had too much. But I guess that's here in Atlanta though. I don't know about Jacksonville. I don't know. I'm talking about in Atlanta. The hood runs the schools. They do it. I don't know. I just think that folks gonna reject. They gonna reject that schoolhouse being gone. It's such a staple in the community, especially if they done named the school Muhammad Ali Elementary, Ben Carson Middle School, MLK High. Especially they don't put a black name on it, you can forget it. I mean, you really can forget it.
I agree. It's going to be tough.